Let us start with another portion of molecular basis of inheritance. Till now, we have already dealt with the genetic material DNA. Now, let's look up to the next genetic material, which is an RNA. So, RNA is the first genetic material which we can think of. There are various reasons for that, and we will look into each one of it in details. The very first thing is that the 2' group of the ribonucleotide is reactive group, and that makes RNA as a catalyst. So let's look up to that same structure once again. You remember the presence of this 2' OH in ribose sugar, and this was the one which was absent in deoxyribose sugar. So ribose sugar has the presence of this OH group, and deoxyribose sugar has just the presence of H. This OH makes RNA much more reactive, and because of being reactive, it can react with any organism or any molecule and form certain new structures. And this may have led to the evolutionary success of the RNA as compared to DNA. And that's why the entire course of evolution, if we think of, it must be an RNA which has initiated the process of transfer of genetic material from parents to the offspring. Now, this is evident that essential life processes such as the metabolism, translation, splicing, all of these have evolved all only around the RNA, and it has been the RNA which was the first to perform all these functions because of its reactive nature. Whereas DNA has also done the or also DNA has also learned the entire processes or life processes, but of course after the RNA, because RNA was capable of trying all the different modes in order to perform every activity or every genetic combinations. Let's see the next thing, that is the structure of the RNA. Now it is a single stranded structure, we all are aware about it, and in the pyrimidines we see that thymine is replaced by uracil. Other than that, you can always see that it has 5' and 3' ends respectively, and because of presence of these 5' and 3' ends, it is very evident that from which side, or which side has 5' end and which side has 3' end, which part is much more reactive. It should be the 3' and if it is much more reactive, then it can add up to the other biomolecules, and similarly 5' end can also add up to the biomolecules. Now let's recapitulate the structure of this ribose sugar once. You all remember it has 5 arms, and out of these 5 arms, this one has presence of CH2. I will just write OH. OH is our main concern because it will make, or it is the one which gives 5. This is the fifth carbon atom. So the fifth carbon atom is the one which gives 5' end, and third carbon atom, this one, is the 3' end. If 5' end is free, then it is the 5, it is the place which is represented by 5', and if 3' has free OH group, then we call it as 3' hydroxyl free end. And this is very important because it helps in nomenclature of the entire strand. Next is the structure of polynucleotide chain. The polynucleotide chain is as such that it has 3 components. What are the 3 components? Like the DNA, it also has presence of a ribose sugar. Here it is not deoxyribose, here it is a ribose sugar, a phosphate, and nitrogenous base. So with the help of these 3, there is formation of a nucleotide unit. The nitrogenous bases which are present, they are the purines and pyrimidines like the DNA, but there is just slight change. Pyrimidine, which was thymine, gets methylated to form uracil, and that is the difference in between the DNA and RNA. The sugar position 2 is an additional OH group, and that adds to the higher catalytic property of the RNA. We have already discussed the structure of the sugar. So I don't think we need to discuss it, but still, I want you all to remember it in the best possible way. I don't want anyone to forget it. So please remember, this OH is the fifth position, this one is the third position, and one more H is there at the second. OH, I'm so sorry, it is OH at the second position. So these three OH groups makes the entire ribose sugar very reactive as compared to the deoxyribose sugar. The last thing is about the presence of the nucleotides and the nucleosides. What are nucleosides? When we add a nitrogenous base to a sugar, we call it as a nucleoside. But as soon as there is addition of a phosphate group to it, then it becomes a nucleotide. And these all structures are formed in the ribose sugar, and that's why we call it as ribonucleoside or ribonucleotide. The addition of the sugar is of ribose sugar, that's why it is becoming ribonucleotide or ribonucleoside. But had it been a DNA, then we could have said deoxyribonucleotide, which we normally say. Now let's see the next thing, which is the different types of RNA we have. There are basically three types of RNA which you all should be aware of. The first thing, type is the messenger RNA or mRNA. We will be representing it as mRNA. It brings the genetic information of DNA transcribed on it for protein synthesis. So it is a single stranded RNA and it is capable of forming a usable protein. So it is red, it forms a usable protein, and that protein can be utilized for certain actions. Now, how is the protein formed? We will just look into that. You can see this structure. Just before this structure, there is one more structure which is an hnRNA, which is known as heteronuclear RNA. This heteronuclear RNA is just a precursor molecule which is capable of forming a utilizable form of or usable form of mRNA. Now see, there are two subunits which RNA has or an mRNA has. This is a pre-mRNA, you can see. In the pre-mRNA, you will be able to see exon and introns. Now these two units are very important. Exons are the ones which are usable, or if we join the exons together, then we get the protein which is required in order to form, or the gene, we should say. We will be able to form a gene if we join all the exons together, and this gene will be capable of forming the protein which is required for us in order to produce an enzyme. In order to do that, or in order to avoid always, or in order to avoid continuous formation of the protein, the nature has developed the nucleus or the pre-mRNA in such a way that in between the exons there is presence of an non-sensible or useless unit which is intron, which is useful only in not allowing them to form the protein at all the time. So all the exons will be present as such, and what we need over here is molecular scissors. With the help of molecular scissors, we cut at these introns and join all the exons together. The introns, they are removed off. This is the intron which is removed off. It is not required when we want the protein synthesis to occur, and this spliced mRNA is an active mRNA. Now this active mRNA is still not capable of forming the required kind of enzyme which we want. In order to make it capable of formation of that enzyme, we need to do capping and we need to do tailing. After doing capping and tailing, only this molecule will be capable of moving out of the nucleus and going to the site where the synthesis of protein can be done, and then after the activity of the enzyme can be seen. So I hope you all can gather little amount of information about how does the proteins work. Next thing is about the ribosomal RNA. Ribosomal RNA is also known as the rRNA. The rRNA is a kind of largest RNA which is capable of protein synthesis, and it is associated with the proteins only. It has several subunits for both the prokaryotes and eukaryotes. Let's see the subunits. The prokaryotic subunit of ribosome is 70S. It has 70S subunit. This 70s subunit is formed of 50s subunit and 30s subunit. Now you must be thinking 50 plus 30 is 80 by 70s subunit. S is Svedberg's unit. Svedberg is a coefficient, or it is a value determining factor which determines the ultracentrifugation value. So these ribosomes, they are broken down, then after they are centrifuged, and after centrifugation we get 50s subunit, which is a larger subunit having 5s subunit. If we further centrifugate it, it again differentiates into 5s and 23s subunit, and these two together form the 50s subunit. And a smaller subunit, which is 16s subunit, can be formed from the 30s subunit after further centrifugation or ultracentrifugation. So this is actually the structure of prokaryotic ribosome. Now, think about these structures being as such present in the nucleus, and as soon as these two subunits they join together, they become active and they perform their function. Similarly, this is just for the prokaryotes. What about the eukaryotes? Eukaryotes have 80s subunit as total, or as the one which is capable of performing the functions or protein synthesis. So one is 60s subunit and the other one is 40s subunit, which combine together to form this big molecule which is 80s subunit molecule, and it performs the function of protein synthesis. This 80s subunit has 60 and 40s subunits. This 60s subunit also has 5s RNA, 5.8s RNA, and 28s RNA. These three together form the 60s RNA. Although if you just add it down, it won't come to that. But again, it's all about the centrifugation value. After centrifugation, the sedimentation coefficient is measured with the help of this S value. S value is basically the sedimentation coefficient. Sedimentation coefficient, because most of the molecules which are biomolecules, they all settle down, or if we cut them and centrifuge them, they all settle down at different levels. So with the help of that information, we can just categorize them in two ways. One is for the prokaryotic ribosomes and for the eukaryotic ribosomes. So the ribosomal units for the prokaryotes and the eukaryotes is quite different. Next information is about the transfer RNA or the tRNA. tRNA is the smallest RNA which is found. Now, this tRNA is a very special molecule, not only in the form that it is the smallest RNA. Other than that, also, this RNA is the one which is soluble in 1 molar NaCl. This is a very special phenomena which cannot be seen in any other tRNAs. It is also a single stranded tRNA, but there is a slight difference in it. The difference lies in the fact that this single stranded tRNA has certain subunits which can join again with each other, and because of again joining together, this structure forms or acts as an adapter molecule. Adapter molecule in the sense it can hold on to certain amino acids and produce it, or let it be available to certain other subunits or subunits of the tRNA. The structures which we can see after modification of this tRNA are cloverleaf structure, and another structure is the inverted capital L structure, which is a compact molecule. So this cloverleaf structure is a 2D structure. Most of the times the questions are asked about the 2D structure of tRNA and 3D structure of tRNA. So you should be capable of answering this question. Other than that, it has a amino acid acceptor end, which is 3' and an anticodon loop where the three bases are complementary to each other, and there is a amino acid binding site as well. So with the help of these all subunits, there is presence or there is formation of this transfer RNA. Transfer rRNA. Let's look up to the structure of the tRNA. You can see the structure of tRNA. It is somewhat similar to the structure of a clover leaf. One at 3' position, you can see that it is known as the amino acid attachment site. So amino acids will come and get attached over here. This T loop is also known as T-psi C loop. because of presence of GTP CG region, which is also known as pseudouracil or pseudouridine or pseudoguanosine region. This region is responsible for ribosome recognition. So, what kind of ribosome is coming and getting attached? It is a prokaryotic organism. So, it will come and get attached. If it is a eukaryotic organism, then there will be presence of ATS subunits coming and getting attached. Anticodon loop is this position where the mRNA will be read and anticodons will be recognized. This small area is a vestigial region which is not of much importance. The D loop is also known as DHU loop or dihydrouracil loop. It is the site for amino acid recognition. So anticodon loop is a reading loop, and there are total amount of 61 types of tRNA which are found in the living organism. So this is a basic structure of the tRNA molecule. Next thing we should know is few terminologies like cistone. Cistone is a part of DNA or gene uh, which synthesizes a polypeptide or a gene. So a functional form of gene can be formed after the formation of a cistone, or cistone is capable of forming a particular protein. It is the active form or functional form of a gene. Monocistronic, these are basically the uh, human beings. So a single protein or a polypeptide is formed in the case of monocistronic kind of genes. Polycistronic genes are many proteins are formed in these cases. And C value is another very important unit which determines that total DNA content or gametic content of a chromosome or an organism. So a single cell is called haploid if its value is 1C. A single cell is said to be diploid if its value is 2C, and C value is expressed in terms of picograms. Now, one thing is to be kept in mind that we are why are we using the C value? We are using it in order to determine the genetic complexity of an organism. If the organism is less complex, like a bacteria, then the C value will be less. If the complexity of the organism goes on increasing, then the organism becomes has much higher C value, so it can be much more. The C value content will increase for the complex organisms. Now let's see the comparison between monocistronic and polycistronic mRNA. As we discussed, monocistronic mRNA are present in the eukaryotes, whereas polycistronic mRNA are present in prokaryotes. Polycistronic mRNAs contain more than one cistone, whereas monocistronic mRNAs contain a single cistone. Polycistronic mRNAs are transcribed from more than one gene and have many initiation and termination codons. Whereas monocistronic mRNAs, they are formed from single protein and they are transcribed from just single gene or one cistone. So only one site for initiation and one site for termination is present in them. So I hope you all have gathered some information or good enough information about the RNA world. And you can think that RNA is a very important molecule for the formation of the genetic material, because it was the it is very reactive and it is the one which may have initiated the process of genetic transfer.